Emma's committed to Ohio State in 2022. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Emma, and how's everything going?
It's going pretty good. Pretty hot here. It's about like 90, so having outdoor sports is kind of hard, but everything's been going well.
That's good to hear. And yeah, I know the weather's starting to get hot. That's what happens in the summer, but I prefer it a little more than blizzards. So I take what I can get.
Yep, me too.
Now, how are you doing today? And what's your plans for the summer to prepare for next year?
I'm doing pretty well. Finishing up with school on Thursday. We have finals today or tomorrow and Thursday. And summer programs start first or second week of June coming up next week, I'm assuming. Had another prospects weekend, the first prospects weekend last weekend, and just kind of getting back into the program and getting all the Benild girls back together and just kind of adapting to the new rules with the COVID stuff and yeah, just getting ready for the season.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how has academics been like this year, I guess, because I graduated high school last year when the pandemic started. So I feel like it's a little bit different just having the online school that's split with in-person classes because starting college this year was kind of a fresh slate, getting used to the online school. However, I feel like it's more difficult for yourself because you're used to being in school all the time for high school,
Yep.
and then it kind of just switches all of a sudden in the middle of your junior year.
Yeah, so we started out in the hybrid program. So we were going every other day in person and then online, which that was kind of weird. It was better than being fully online just with the extended online school from last March to the end of the school year. But we switched over to all in person, mm, I think, for the last 3 months of school for like the fourth quarter. And that was nice. It was kind of nice seeing everyone again. It was busy. But seniors recently just got done. But a lot of the teachers have been super lenient and super understanding with everything going on. So they're not really pushing a lot of hard tests. Like a lot of them are open note. They're like understanding that like there's struggles with like getting sick and being quarantined and not being able to see your friends or whatever that may be. But with the vaccines out now too, that's really helpful. And it just kind of is helping everything get back to normal in school and just in the world in general.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And how have you dealt with the Zoom breakout rooms? Because that's the thing I hate most about online school. Like, there's a lot of things I do like about online school, but the Zoom breakout rooms are just brutal because no one
You
talks.
know, they're hard because no one talks and they have their cameras off. And I mean, I haven't had to deal with that for a while now because I haven't been online in so long. But that was one of the worst parts when the teacher said that we were going in breakout rooms because no one would talk and
Yeah,
we didn't really know what's going on.
yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. Now, last year, like many other hockey players, you had to deal with a lot of challenges preparing for the season just because gyms were closed, ice was hard to find.
Yeah.
Now that things are kind of opening back up, do you think that will change your approach for this off season?
I think it will a little bit. The protocols are changed, obviously, and I think that it'll be a lot more lenient. So our schedule for Benilde is we have ice times 3 times a week and then dryland as well. And then a group of girls does morning workouts, which we also did last summer. But I think we're just kind of all back together because we had to split up into 2 ice sessions, which was hard because we were split up from different teammates. But I think it'll be really nice to not play with masks anymore. We didn't have to in the summer, but in the winter we did, and that was hard. But I think it'll just be exciting to get the whole group back together and not really have to worry as much about getting sick and as much about wearing masks and just focusing on the season and just making sure that we're ready.
Yeah, how'd you deal with all those conditioning drills wearing the mask? Because that seems difficult.
Yeah, it was hard. A lot of the girls had like the masks that like connect to your helmet, but then we found a loophole with like mesh masks. I don't know if
Mhm.
we're really supposed to use those, but the refs were super lenient about it. They just let us wear it at our chin as long as we had one on. They were fine. But I mean, the practices were hard. I mean, we all kind of wore them at our chin, and the coaches weren't really concerned with it because we were all being safe with COVID outside of the rink too. So we weren't too careful, or we weren't too scared of it. But we did get shut down once towards the end of the season. So we missed our last week of regular games. So we went into sections with only maybe one game on our back. So that was hard, but it was it was a bad time to get shut down. But we also got shut down. We did get shut down, but there was a case at the beginning of the year. I had been to have that case, which is kind of bad timing right at the beginning of the year, but nothing got shut down there. We just lost a few players, but you're able to win a game or two with down three, four players. So that was good. But other than that, COVID didn't really affect our year too much. It was hard with like the locker rooms because we couldn't get dressed inside. But overall, it was a solid season. I'm glad we had one.
Yeah, it's weird because in the East Coast where I'm from, like colleges, certain areas you had to wear a mask on the ice, and other areas you didn't have to. And I know it's kind of the similar thing for Minnesota. I don't know why it's so different though across the state. I kind of wish it was more like everyone had to follow the same rules.
Yeah, I know, because I was at nationals out east, and we didn't have to wear masks on the ice, so that was nice because we were just kind of in Minnesota. We were just kind of starting to let go of that rule and not wearing them, but it was nice to not have to wear them out east.
Now, thinking about this year's off season, I guess what's something you want to improve on the most for your game?
I think strength is a big part of it. In order to improve in a lot of aspects of your game, almost all of them, you need to be strong. And with strength, you can basically get better at anything with your skating, your stride, your hands, your shot, anything. It just improves your overall game. So I think for me as an individual and our team as well, just focusing on the strength.
And being a senior, you're obviously going to be one of the leaders on the team. What type of leadership do you hope to bring to the team? Are you more of a vocal or a lead by example type of player?
Definitely leading by example. I think that vocal, yes, it helps, but some girls kind of, I don't know how much they pay attention to that, but they more so just look up to people, or they look up to how hard one works, or how they just find the leadership to lead everyone. I mean, being an upperclassman now, it feels like I was an underclassman. I mean, it was 2 years ago, but it feels like last season, which it technically was, but it just doesn't feel that long ago. And now being a rising senior already, it's a big role. And we lost a lot of our upperclassmen. So we only have, well, we have a large senior class, but our rising junior class is only two people. So the senior class is a really large role. And captains recently released. So that'll be I'm excited. It'll be a fun season, and just making sure that all the seniors and all the upperclassmen are like willing to lead the younger girls, because we're gonna have a young team again. But it should be fun.
Yeah, no, I think it's good though to lead by example, because if someone just talks but doesn't like follow what they're saying, it's kind of
Mhm.
hard to like as a younger player to like see like how you like want to perform. So I think if you like show the younger players like what it takes to win and what it takes to be a key leader on a team, I think that really helps, especially since when they become seniors, they'll use your example and kind of pass that along as the team goes on 5 or 6 years after you leave.
Yep, the way that you lead just kind of sets up the team for the next few years, because that's the example that the girls that are going to be the seniors and the leaders for the next year are going to follow.
Now, when you were a freshman, sophomore, just talk about the upperclassmen that you had and just the leadership that they brought. And how are you going to use their leadership for your leadership this upcoming season?
I was just talking to one of the seniors, one of the senior captains that I had my freshman year, and we were a super young team. We were basically all lowerclassmen, maybe three or four upperclassmen, but that was definitely a change. Obviously, being a first year varsity athlete, it's scary already, and being a young team, it's even more because you don't have a ton of older girls to look up to. But the girls who were leading and who were the captains did a really good job. They made sure that the younger girls felt welcome, and that the culture was strong, that nothing happened, no cliques or anything like that, and they were just super strong. And this year, being a captain, I'm going to be able to follow their roles, because we have a young team. It'll be a change, and just making sure that those younger girls feel welcome, and just everyone has a good spot, a good place, and just thriving in their environment.
Now let's start talking about the beginning of your hockey career. So you're from Minnesota. Talk about growing up there and how did you start playing hockey?
So my mom, because I'm one of three, and I'm the only girl. So my mom was trying to get me into the dances and the ballet and the gymnastics and all those types of sports, but they weren't really my interests. So then my dad put me into hockey, and immediately fell in love. I was about first grade, I think. So I've been playing ever since. I was in the Dinah Association. I played with a lot of girls that I'm still friends with today, and built a lot of great connections. Obviously got a lot better, and then transitioned over to Benild for my freshman year. Um, and I had bunion surgery the summer of going into freshman year. So going into freshman year, not having any ice time, going into captains with, that was my first skate in 3 months, I think it was. So that was new. But growing up the Indiana Association, it built me the player that I am today. It made me competitive, and it just kind of allowed me to realize how strong their other girls are, and how that level, and I'm just going to keep playing with those girls, and how the level is only going to get stronger and stronger.
Yeah, and coming into Benilde, what made you want to go to that school? And I guess what was the biggest adjustment you had to make coming into high school hockey?
I think the main reason I wanted to go to Benilde is that I felt that I could succeed better at the environment. It was really between Edina and Benilde, and I knew that the coaches at Edina were great, but I also knew that the coaches at Benilde I could build a better relationship with, and I think I would have a better opportunity at thriving there. Um, and with academics as well, I had wanted to have a smoother transition from a young private school to private high school. Obviously, that's changing for college, but at the time, I was not wanting to make that big of a transition. And then going into high school hockey, I knew that the speed is going to be a lot higher. It was scary playing in my first game. I wasn't super confident with the puck. I didn't know what to do, and especially playing with new girls that a lot of them I had never heard of before. It was hard. But a few games in, I settled in with my D partner, and we just kind of went from there. And we had a solid freshman year. We were conference champs for the first time in quite a few years, so that was good. And it just started a dynasty that we've continued to be building.
Yeah, and what was the key for, I guess, growing confidence from your freshman year to where you are now as a senior? Because that takes a while sometimes.
Yeah, it does. And I think just finding confidence in yourself and knowing that I have time, I have good players around me that will help me. And like, if I make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, and it's not going to adjust like or change how I'm playing. Um, and obviously, that takes time. It takes some time for more players and less for others. But it's really just having your teammates build you up, because that's a really important piece, and just having your teammates be there for you and you be there for your teammates, and just understanding that you have a role on the team, and you making a simple mistake isn't going to screw with that.
Now, I'm not from Minnesota. I'm from the East Coast. So just describe the Minnesota high school hockey scene, just how big it is, and what's it like being a player in that atmosphere? Because I've seen the state tournament clips, and it's pretty cool.
It's
The
so
kind of the show that you guys pull off there.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's been a dream to make it to the state or not, well, the state tournament. State championship would be great, but um, I'm. It's always been a dream to get there. Been to the state games a lot before. The tournament's super fun. It has a lot of people, and the atmosphere is so fun and big and really enjoyable. The amount of teams is incredible. There's a really large community, and everyone comes together in like the summer with the different leagues and just playing with each other. And that builds a lot of different relationships as well, just connecting communities. And it's really just all one big environment that everyone shares. And it's really cool because it's really unique, because not a lot of other states have it like that. They don't have the big state championship. They don't have the big state tournament with the hockey hair, with the boys side and everything like that. And I think everyone, all the hockey players, I hope, maybe even all around the country, know about the state tournament and just how big it is in Minnesota. But really growing up in it and understanding and like beginning to understand what it is was a really key role in like confidence and motivation to get to that tournament.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome because being from Massachusetts, I think besides Minnesota, Massachusetts is probably like the second biggest hockey state in the
Mm,
U.S.
yeah.
And like for my games, like the best, I think the most fans we've ever had was like 200 people at most. So it's crazy to see like how you guys can fill up an entire NHL stadium for
Oh yeah.
one of the biggest games of the year. I think it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. It's really cool. Very cool.
Is it weird talking to players who aren't from Minnesota just about that high school hockey scene? Because it's kind of hard to understand if you're not in it.
Yeah, it is weird because knowing girls from out east, from like the national camps and those types of events, they like just the different language with it too. Like they call breezers hockey pants, or just like the different
Oh yeah.
aspects of the game. Yep. And that's kind of interesting too, because the club level is competitive, but I don't know, like a lot of other, like there's some college teams, not college teams, there's some high school teams out there out east and some in Wisconsin that I know of, but it's just not at that same compete level. And I think it's really cool that we have the ability to um, create a unique area and environment that is that the East Coast doesn't have. But connecting with those East Coast players is really interesting because playing against those club teams, it's a high level, and I think it's almost underestimated. But it's really interesting because a lot of those girls that play club come from everywhere instead of just one little location in Minnesota.
I will say, though, I think the East Coast kind of owns college hockey a little bit. We won the national championship. Massachusetts won the national championship.
Yep.
So I feel like we might have the college hockey title for now until Minnesota wins it probably next year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because there's really one big conference in the Midwest, and that's like the Big Ten and then the WCHA for women's. But there's a lot more college teams for women, specifically out east.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of Minnesota girls go out east, but a lot of them also stay in the Midwest.
Yeah.
So I think it's just a matter of different competition levels or like the type of play that they want to be involved in, or maybe just wanted to get out of the East or even Midwest. So yeah, it's really interesting to see all the different levels and just the dispersion of all the players.
Yeah, definitely. I guess were fans allowed at the state tournament this year?
They were. I think it was at XL, which is where it is. I think it was maybe 25% capacity. It's definitely not as many as it would typically be. There weren't really student sections, which is hard for the players, obviously, because for like Edine and Andover, they've been to the state championship before, and they just don't have that same environment. So I'm sure it was different, and especially for the boys too, because they normally pack the whole XL. I mean, the girls get a good show too, but just not that much. But even at regular games, we had a decent amount of fans, maybe the exact amount that we would have typically, which was nice. But it's still a completely different environment without with masks and with the restrictions and all of that. But I'm excited to get back to normal hopefully this season.
Yeah, I agree with things hopefully coming back to normal. I think it could happen in the next few months. And I'm excited because you see baseball games, they're at full capacity. So you hope hockey can do that next season as well.
Yeah, so is lacrosse. Lacrosse has full capacity, no restrictions or anything. I mean, that's also outside, but hopefully it'll get back to normal for
definitely.
hockey.
Now, I have a question about the hockey hair thing. Why is it only like boys have to do the hockey hair? Why not girls hockey players do it? I don't get it.
I think it's specifically boys because I think girls have a lot of similar hair. I don't know how like special you can make your hair. Like some teams dye their hair, but I mean, I don't know how. Because if one girl wins the hockey hair, another girl probably has really similar hair. But for boys, like you can have an afro, you can have like slick back hair, you can do a lot of different things that a lot of boys wouldn't do. And I think that's a really key role in the state tournament because it's funny to see all the boys that like try really hard to get on that team. But I don't know. That's a good question because I think it started off just with the boys, but I don't really know how they would do it with the girls.
You should try it next year, like when you do the intros, I don't know if they still do that now, but like you just do the hair flip and I think you can make the team. I think that'll be awesome.
I think so. Yeah, they didn't do the intros this past year, I think just because of COVID, but
No, but next year, promise me that you at least do something to try to make the team. And we'll definitely repost it. And we could say that it started off with this podcast as well.
I will.
Awesome. Now, I guess like what was the key for yourself dealing with this pandemic year? Watching the games from an outside perspective, I felt like it was kind of weird without that many fans wearing masks like we talked about, but just like the COVID protocols your team had to go through. And you were saying that your team got shut down during parts of the year. So how did you like deal with all the challenges that came with playing hockey in a pandemic?
It was hard. It was difficult, especially at first, just because I think the rules were a lot more strict then. Specifically, our homework didn't let us in our locker room, which is a burden on the seniors, and just not being able to get ready in that environment because that was always a really key role in like building connections and relationships because you build those connections with those who you sit by. But I think that as we got through the season, we kind of understood that it's not going to change. We're lucky enough to even have a season. And when we got shut down, we made sure that like we weren't discouraged. We weren't like, oh, our season's over, like we're going to lose. Like none of that happened. And we just continued to stay together. And our coaches gave us workouts to do, and they just kept us engaged and not forgetting about the season.
Yeah, is it weird dressing at home and then driving to the rink? Like, I guess how do you adjust to that? Because I think that's a bit weird.
Yeah, it was hard especially because that was when we were still in hybrid school too, and they moved their practice time to 3, and we get out of school at 2:30, and trying to get out of our school parking lot is a mess. So really just getting ready outside in the winter is brutal. And it was definitely a change. It was something that none of us really wanted to do, but we were lucky enough to have a season, and we got to go in our locker room for games, but that was about it.
Yeah.
But it was hard. I mean, getting dressed outside isn't ideal, but I mean, it's something that we had to deal with and just get through.
Yeah, no, it's like, is it weird driving with the full blown equipment? Like, does
Yeah,
anyone notice, or is it like kind of awkward, I guess?
it's hard, especially with smaller cars too, because you have to adjust your seat, and sometimes your seat doesn't go super low, so you're like your head is touching the ceiling. That didn't happen for me, but I just am assuming that if you had a smaller car, it'd be more difficult.
Yeah,
But I mean, it was interesting. It was it was weird being a home dresser again because it's just flashing back to younger ages and just having your parents tie your skates and just getting ready at home. It was
I
interesting.
know. Yeah, no, that's definitely odd, but it's better than not playing a season. So you take, like I said, you just have to kind of deal with some of that stuff because you
Exactly.
have to look at the bigger picture.
Yep.
Now,
Exactly.
I want to talk about one particular game because this season your team had a lot of success. You made it to the playoffs and you lost the state Section 6AA championship game to Edina 3-1. Just talk about your perspective from that game. What do you think happened, and just how you're going to use that game as motivation coming into your senior year?
Idan is a really big name. And I think that we played them 3 times in the year, and each time we lost by one or two. Um, it was hard. I mean, going into that game, we knew that we had a chance, but once they scored a goal, we shut down a little bit, and we got a little chippy, and we got a lot of penalties that game too, and it was a physical game. And we didn't score until the last 3 minutes, maybe even less. So that was obviously hard because we couldn't get a puck in the net, and that's obviously a really key motivator. But once they got up to 3-0, you could just feel the team kind of shut down and just
Mhm.
accepted defeat. But our coaches, you could tell they're just trying to do everything. And a lot of the girls were just like desperate to get a goal and get motivation to win and like push through the game because a goal game isn't the end. It's after a period, if you're down, it's not the end of the game. You have 2 more periods to go. And I think that's a mindset that the team needs to have this year because, yes, we might have setbacks, but that doesn't mean that you can't be shutting down because, yes, we're going to face tough teams like Edina and we're going to face tough teams. But when you get down, it's not something that you can keep doing. Like you need to push back and get a goal and fight for that motivation back because that's the only way you're going to win.
Yeah, no, I was checking out the box score of that game. It was very physical, like you said, 11
Very,
penalties.
yeah.
Does your approach change in those physical games?
I think I don't think it changes. I think that we just make sure that we stay disciplined, and we don't get the cheap penalties like tripping and slashing and hooking and all of those. But if it's a physical game, it's a physical game. Like there's nothing you can do about it. It's a playoff section final. Those are games are automatically going to be physical, but it's something that we can it's nothing we can control. Like we can't control it to an extent, but if they're being physical, we can't be beat up by them. But I definitely think that if we're getting a lot of penalties against a team like Edina, who has a very strong power play, that'll be detrimental because I'm pretty sure 2 of their goals were from power plays. And without those penalties, they wouldn't have happened. So I think those penalties were maybe detrimental. Um, but just making sure to stay disciplined throughout all the games next year is always also going to be important just because those power plays might kill us.
Yeah, I was checking the photo galleries out. You threw a big check. I kind of want to talk to you about that because I don't know if that's a penalty or not because I know it's different because with hitting in girls hockey versus boys hockey, but you threw the body around, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
I did. I think I might have gotten 2 penalties that game, which wasn't obviously intended. Being a bigger player, it's hard, but there's a lot of big girls out there as well. And I try not to do it. Sometimes that I think the picture that you're talking about, I think it was on a one-on-one. I think I kind of hit her down, but
Mm.
that obviously wasn't intended. I wasn't trying to tackle her, but sometimes that just happens. And that's hard. I mean, if you don't want to call it a goal your way, or if it doesn't even go your way, that's hard. But that kind of physical aspect is important, and just try not to get those penalties is also really important because, like I said earlier, that can be detrimental.
Do you think hitting should be allowed in women's hockey? Because honestly, I think it should. I know some people disagree with that, but I think it would, like, for calling a game, it would be easier because I know some refs, like, they're super strict about what's a hit and what's like not a hit. And I think if you get rid of that, like with I guess like some refs are strict about it, some refs aren't strict about it. So I feel like if you allow hitting, I think it would be easier to call games and actually make the game a little safer.
I agree. I think that at least board checking should be a little legal, not like open ice, because that can be really dangerous. And I know that it's legal in boys, but they're obviously stronger for just biological reasons. But I think that it'll be safer for everyone if there is checking allowed. But because a lot of the time a rub out is called for a checking penalty. And if the ref clearly sees that and if the rules are changed, then I think that will help the game be a little more physical. But if some teams can't handle that, they can't handle the physicality, because that's the kind of physical aspect that will be present in those big games. But I think that it'd be a good idea to just make it a little bit more lenient, just because a lot of the calls are just because a bigger girl goes against a smaller girl and just rubs her out and she falls, and then they
Mhm.
get called for a check. So I think they could be a little more lenient with it.
What's the biggest check you've ever thrown in hockey? I'm curious, is it that one, or the one we're talking about, or because you're the only girl growing up with two older brothers, I'm assuming you had to learn how to check a little bit growing up?
Yeah, I would probably say one of the ones in the Edina game. Um, I yeah, I don't really know. I've thrown a decent amount. I try not to, but I mean,
Yeah,
sometimes it just happens. But yeah, I'd probably say one of the ones in Edina.
nice, nice. Now let's transition a little bit, talk about college hockey and recruiting to Ohio State. So I guess what was your recruitment process like, and what made you want to commit to Ohio State?
I was probably in the recruiting process from because it starts June 15th, and that's the same for this year too. But I was probably in that process for about a month until I committed. And that was long. It was hard. I mean, calls almost every day was a lot, just on top of my other schedules and my other activities. But it was completely worth it. Ohio State was my first call on June 15th, bright and early. And I was able to get out there for a visit, not even a visit. I just toured campus because that was really important to me. And I just walked around. There's no one there, but I mean, I would rather do that than go in there empty handed and not really know what the environment is like, and then go into it not really liking it. But um, the coaches were great. I talked to Nadine Muzzerell my first call, and she was really opening. She was really honest with me about just the whole process and what they were thinking and why they wanted to recruit me, and same with a lot of other coaches. But um, Ohio State just really felt like home, and they were super welcoming with the whole process. And I was able to talk to players and coaches, and it was an overall great experience.
Yeah, do you look at some of the Ohio State alumni and hope to develop kind of like them? Because they have some great players that are there now, and obviously that were there in the past. Emma Malte comes to mind. Tatum Skaggs is a great player. Obviously, Natalie Spooner went there a couple of years ago. Do you ever look at the alumni and like kind of like does that it make you more excited to go there just because like I could turn into one of those players?
It really does, because I think a lot of those players that you just listed, they came into the program when Nadine was just getting there, which kind of brings high hopes to me too, because I know that Nadine is a great coach, that she focuses on that developmental area, and she wants those types of players to come out of her program. And I'm excited because I see those players, and I see that they even have the opportunity to come back for another year, which is really cool. But yeah, I think just seeing the great players that come out from there, and how that is a possibility for me as well, is really interesting and cool.
Now, this past year, do you like ever think about college hockey during the high school season? Because I've never had the chance to be recruited by a D1 school, but I guess seems kind of difficult. I guess like when you're playing, you're trying to like prove yourself to, recruits and all those type of people.
This past year is definitely different because the coaches weren't there in person. So you didn't really know if they were watching or not. But I knew that my coaches were. They had eyes everywhere, I'm sure. But it was definitely different. Like playing at the last prospects weekend with all the coaches there is definitely really different, because I feel like you can just feel a lot of, not a lot of pressure, but you can feel pressure to do well. But it was definitely a change. It was definitely hard because focusing on having one coach watching you is also different, but also understanding that there are other scouts for like the USA programs and stuff like that, and just knowing that it's not only one coach that you have to prove yourself to, it's multiple. But just not getting in your head about that is really key, because it's really easy to get tied up with a simple mistake that you made and just keep making simple mistakes after that too, and just focusing on your game in the present moment and going to the next shift rather than sulking on the last one.
Now, did you watch any college hockey this year at all, or did you not really have the chance just because your season was very busy?
I watched some Ohio State games. That's really it. But it was hard because a lot of the games were overlapping with mine.
Yeah.
And also the streaming programs, they were either paid, like I paid for BTN Plus, but all the other ones were like Flow Hockey or other streaming programs that I couldn't watch it on. So I did my best. I looked at scores a lot of the time, and I just tried to follow along with mainly Ohio State. But um, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah. What was your thoughts on them making the Frozen Four this year?
Really cool. Really cool. I think it's really interesting to see how Nadine has shaped the program and just seeing how successful they've been the past 2 years. And even seeing that they've been in the NCAA tournament the last 3 years, with last year winning the WCHA championship and not being able to go to the national tournament just because of COVID. But it's definitely really interesting to see how their program has developed, and I'm really excited to get there and hopefully have the opportunity to play in the Frozen Four just like them.
Yeah, definitely. Have you gotten the chance to meet any of your freshman class? I'm trying to think. Haley Maxwell is the only other Minnesota person that I know is committed to Ohio State, but anyone
Yeah.
else?
So it's Haley Maxwell, Maeve Kelly, Barrett Limborg, and then a girl named Sydney Morrow are three. Well, Sydney's from, I don't know where she's from, but she plays at Shattuck. But I committed with in like the same time frame with Haley, Maeve, and Barrett, and I've played junior Whitecaps hockey with them, which is like the summer program. And I played with them for a few years. I played with Haley and Barrett when I was younger, and I've always just been kind of mutual with Maeve, and we've been on the same elite league team the past year. Same with Barrett. But just kind of building connections with them, and I'm really excited that I have the opportunity to go play with them.
Yeah, especially Haley Maxwell, because she's obviously one of the top defensemen in Minnesota. Is it going to be good for yourself to be her teammate, not play against her once college rolls around?
Yeah, it'll be good. I played with her the last weekend. I love playing with her. She's great. I used to also play with her with the Edina Association, so really cool to be back with her and have the potential to play together on the same shift too.
Now, for college hockey fans that haven't seen you play in person before, just describe your game to them, and what do you hope to bring Ohio State individually as a player?
I'd say I'm a very offensive defenseman. Yes, defense is very important, but I like to get up in the play and just be physical in the offensive zone and just make sure that nothing gets past our goalie. And when it does, we just bounce back and don't sulk in the last shift, like I said earlier. But yeah, I'd say I am pretty physical. I like to get shots. I like to score. I like to get assists. But obviously, points are the most important part of the game. Generating good offense and solid defense is obviously really important. And yeah, just making sure that the game is played overall well and balanced.
Is there any player you look up to or try to model your game after?
I'd probably have to say this is a forward, but Kelly Panic, she's my coach at Benild. She's great to see her determination and just how she understands her flaws. Not that she has any. If Kelly, you're listening to this, don't take that personally. But she's great. She's really motivated, and you can just tell. And also, Lee Steckline, she played at the U, and she's a really overall solid defenseman. And Kelly on the ice always brings her up, and it's just like, well, Lee does this, and I think that you can take advice from this. And just seeing how she's adapted as a player, and I think we're similar in size. Obviously, she's bigger and stronger because she's older, but she's definitely someone to look up to.
Yeah, definitely. We're now in a segment I like to call the non-hockey segment, where I ask you some non-hockey questions just to get to know you a little more off the ice. So if you could choose to do anything for a day, what would you choose?
I would probably choose to go to the beach. I love the beach. I probably wouldn't swim too far in the ocean just because there's coral and fish and yeah, I don't know. But I love the warm weather. Also being up in my cabin is great. It's super warm up there over in Wisconsin. But yeah, I'd probably either choose a beach day or lake day.
That's awesome. What beach is your favorite? Because I know Atlantic Ocean has different beaches than like Pacific Ocean. Yeah,
There's a beach in Cabo down in Mexico. We couldn't swim in it because the tide was too high and the waves were heavy, but it was really pretty. There are mountains on the right side and rocks, and the sunset was always really pretty, and it was just great being right by the coast.
I'm an interesting beach guy because I don't like going in the middle of the day just because I don't like the sun being on me. I get very sunburned very easily. But I
Mhm.
love going like at night or early in the morning and just walking. It's a weird thing, but I like walking on the sand. It's really fun for me. So that's kind of like my beach activity. What do you like to do?
I like the walks. The walks are nice and walking in the sand, especially not when the sand is hot though, because that's never fun. But probably Um, I like to be in the sun. My skin is kind of sensitive, so it burns as well. But getting better at using sunscreen. My mom's a dermatologist, so getting kind of engraved with the sunscreen. But um, like being where the sun is, and yeah, I haven't been out to the beach in a while. We went out to Palm Desert for the last spring break, which isn't really near a coast, but excited to hopefully get back to the ocean soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. No, I guess like for me, like something I've learned during quarantine is how much I enjoy walking. Like I could walk. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Forrest Gump, but I can walk just like across the country, listen to music, and it's just fun. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing that I've discovered about myself during quarantine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, walking was a large part of quarantine, just trying to stay active, and that was one of the
Mhm.
ways people did.
Yeah, so I'm a big walker in case people didn't know. Now, another non-hockey question to you is if you could have lunch with anyone in the world, who would it be and why?
Oh, I could have lunch with anyone. I would say Ellen because she's kind of funny, and I think she's met a lot of people too. So I think it'd be kind of interesting to hear her take on them and see if she has any inside gossip or anything like that.
The show is ending, I heard, this year. What's your thoughts on
Really
that? Yeah, she's
interesting.
retiring. I'm not surprised. She's made a ton of money and she's been doing it for 15
Oh
years. I
yeah.
would do the same thing. Just like never, no one would see me again. I would retire and just live off the amount of money I made off that show. So I respect her for doing that.
Yeah, I'd either choose her or probably like Jimmy Fallon because they both
Yeah,
with so many people.
yeah, definitely. Those are
Yeah.
two great answers. Now, who's the funniest teammate you have at Benild?
Probably Lucy Hanson. She came in last year as a junior from Wyzetta, and she was great. Super funny, super energetic, and I didn't know her super well last year, but being her lacrosse teammate, and just getting to know her more was super fun. And she's just has a really good sense of humor. And another one is Anna Putty, and she's also a senior. But once you get to know her, you kind of get into her humor, and she's hilarious. But I'm gonna miss her, both of them next year, and hopefully other people will bring the same joy.
Now, you obviously have the best style on the team, but besides yourself, who has the best style at Benilde?
I would probably say Avery Junker. She's my best friend. But she has great style. She gives me tips every so often. But yeah, she
Mhm.
always pulls out good outfits at school.
Now, I know in college, the players have to wear like suits or dress up before a game. Before COVID, did you have to do any of that or not really?
We didn't. We had set warm ups that we would wear. Everyone got the same team apparel that we would wear. This past COVID year, it was a little different. I don't think people were super strict on it just because usually we have like long sleeves and shorts for warm ups, but we weren't warming up inside. So we weren't really going to sit outside in the cold in long sleeves and shorts. So I think that we all kind of wore the same thing and just made sure that we looked like a team. Uh, but it'll be interesting to get to college and have to dress up like that.
Nice. Do you have like any like how are you going to do that? Because that's kind of like I feel like for guys hockey players it's a little easier because you just have to find a suit and then just wear that every weekend. I feel like it's a lot harder for girls hockey players just because there's so much more to
There's so
choose
much
from.
we can do. Yeah, and there's a lot more style that goes into it. I think like guys obviously have to wear a suit, but they can find a different suit. But for women, it's different because you have to find different accessories that you would want to wear with it, and just you being a girl, you don't want to wear the same thing every
Hmm.
single week, so you'd have to figure that out as well.
I think that'd be cool if like someone changed that though. Just wear the same thing every week. Like
Yeah.
I would wear the same suit every week. I wouldn't care. Maybe it's just because I don't know. Maybe I'm a guy. Just that's how I see things. But I don't know. I feel like it would be cool if like someone just changed that up.
Yeah, I mean, I bet a lot of girls do it, or maybe they wear the same, like if you have a pantsuit or something like that, and you just wear the same. I think of the name blazer if you're the same blazer and like wear a
Yeah.
different belt or something like that. But yeah, it'd be
Now
interesting.
Now, the final non-hockey question I want to ask you is what music are you into? What do you like to listen to?
Love country in the summer. That's really all I've been listening to recently. Trying to mix it up a little bit, but country is definitely a go-to when it's warm out.
Now, back to some hockey questions. Now, my first question to you is what advice would you give a younger player who's trying to pursue a D1 college hockey scholarship, just like some of your younger teammates, I'm assuming, are trying to do as well?
Don't let failure ruin your own success. having a surgery that blockaded and seeing my other friends commit, that was definitely hard, but that didn't stop me from pushing even harder. If anything, that motivated me more because I wanted to be in their spot. um, but I would say just stay determined to get what you want. If you fall out of love for wanting to play college hockey or anything like that, that's okay. But if you really want to pursue that, don't stop working, um, and just keep going and pursue your dream.
Now the women's hockey game is growing every day. It feels like. What would you do to help grow the game even more? Just because there has been some setbacks. Robert Morris's women's hockey program got canceled, and then obviously the World Championships were canceled and rescheduled a few months ago.
I would say just continuing to build programs, because I think in Minnesota specifically, there's like a main club. There's some outskirts one, but OS is a really popular one that has a lot of really good developmental areas. But I think that just creating more opportunities for especially those newer, younger players and just helping them learn how to play the game, because that's such a key part in making them the best players that they can be, and learning how to skate and use their stick and key aspects of the game just like that. And that's not in younger teens. I definitely think that my age group, when we were younger, we were definitely a little bit more skilled. But I think that that obviously takes time. It's not something that comes easy. And I think that understanding that the game is getting younger and younger and even growing, it needs a lot more developmental areas too.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that. And I think also just trying to promote players, whether they're in college, out of college, or in high school as well. I think it's important to just promote players because you see it all the time on social media, and I think it helps grow the sport just a little bit.
And I think that there's a lot of solid media on the women's programs, but seeing that um, the world championships were canceled, I think that was really just because of Canada and how locked down they were. But I don't know how much effort they put into rescheduling it sooner. I know
Mhm.
that they're doing it in August, but I think that they could have had a different approach. And I think that just broadcasting the women's sports will be really helpful and beneficial for them. Just because I think a lot of people might enjoy watching men's sports more, but I think that's mainly because women's sports aren't as broadcasted as theirs.
Yeah, I definitely agree. How I got into women's hockey was just watching the Olympics because it was on TV. And I think if
Mhm.
you have more exposure, more people will watch the women's game and it will grow even more. Because I think if you look at the statistics, if people can watch it, it's very popular. You see it with college softball, and you obviously see it with women's hockey as well. And I just think the main thing that a lot of people were telling me about the whole World Championship situation was there wasn't like a backup plan to like reschedule because the
Mhm.
men's U18 tournament was happening around the same time, and they had a whole backup plan of if things were canceled and stuff. So I think that's what
Okay.
angered a lot of people about that whole situation.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree.
Now, do you have any shout outs you like to give to any teammates, family members, friends? I didn't really mention anyone in this interview. So if you want to shout them out now, feel free to do that.
If any of my teammates are watching or listening, hi. I hope they listen all the way through. But also to my coaches and friends, if you guys are listening, parents, thank you for everything. And yeah, that's about it.
Well, I want to thank you, Emma, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it. Good luck for the rest of your school year and enjoy your senior year. It's super fun. I never really got to have it. Everything was canceled. So I hope you get the
Yeah,
chance to enjoy it and have fun because it's a great moment. And I can't wait to watch you play college hockey in a few years. And just an unbiased opinion, but you're one of my favorite freshmen for the next freshman class. I don't know how to say it, but I'm really looking forward to watching you play. You're an awesome player and a great person as well.
thank you so much. Thank you again for having me on the podcast, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Awesome.